Welcome back to the Tin Man project. This is our final lesson in modeling, and in here we're going to be making the oil can that is his hat, sits on his head, as well as coming in and modifying this chest plate here and recessing an area to create the kind of cavity for the heart, as well as modeling the heart. So let's go ahead and get started with the hat first. We're going to basically extrude out of a cylinder. So let's go ahead and drop one in. Here it is on the bottom. I'm just dragging that up to the top right here. Coming over to the inputs under the channel box, layer editor, under subdivision axis. We're going to give that 12 again and 0 on the caps. And let's go ahead and shape it. And then bringing it out uniformly, grabbing the center one and then kind of adjusting that right there. And you can make this thicker or thinner, however you want. And I'm just moving mine up into position right here. So the head should be intersecting it just a little bit, like that. Okay, let's come back out to here. Okay, so let's grab the faces. I'm just dragging a marquee across the top here that selects both the face on the top and the bottom. We're going to extrude that. Center that in world space, and then we're just going to scale it in, and we want to make sure that this is outside of the head area. You can see it right there, so we don't want it tucked inside here, so it would be on the outside like that. And then I'm just going to select the one on the top. We'll come back later and quad this off on the bottom. So I have the top face selected now. We're going to extrude that. Let's come back out to our front view. And I'm going to drag it straight up to the top, activate the scale tool, grab the center one, scale it in, and we're going to leave an opening there for the spout. We'll drop in an edge loop right here where it's going to bend, and we're going to scale that in about like that. We're going to go ahead and drag in a couple of additional edge loops to hold that together, as well as one right here on the top. We'll finish up our edge loops down here in just a moment. Let's come back out here. Let's grab this face on the very top here. Extrude that. Center it in world space. We're going to scale it in first. That's creating the thickness. Extrude again, and we're going to push it down. And you can scale it up a little bit if you want to kind of follow the same form. And since we're not going to see down inside there, let's just go ahead and delete that face and drop in an edge loop down the inside. One up here along this edge, one in the center of this one. And then come back down here and we'll drop in an edge loop on either side here. One on the edge of this, one in the center here, and then come back under the bottom side and drop one there. So going back to object mode here, I'm going to isolate this selection under Show, Isolate Selection, View Selected. Turns everything else off. I'm going to grab the face on the bottom here, and we can just extrude that in one more time. I'm just scaling it in. That. And then we can quad that off. So Q on the keyboard to end that process. And we're going to use our Split Polygon Tool. Making sure I'm dragging across the edge until it hits that other edge, the vertices, so they're merging the vertices. And the last one across here. Okay, coming back under Show and deselecting that view selected, turns everything else back on. So now we can come back here to our front view and grab all the vertices on the top, and we're going to move those over to the side. Grab the ones on the very top, including the group inside there. We're going to have to shift them around a little bit. So do that. Just kind of line these up a little bit. If you want to make them crooked, go ahead. If you want to kind of line them up a little bit more evenly. You can also add additional edge loops in here if you want to kind of modify this. I'm just going to drag a couple in here and maybe come in and shape them a little. You can always angle them. A little bit easier to see out here. So I've kind of twisted it a little bit and angled it. Doing the same thing down here. Okay. Back to object mode. And now we need to make that handle. So I'm coming into the front view. We're going to do that with a curve. And we'll find that under Create, CV Curve Tool. Let's open up that option box. Reset the tool settings. We want to make sure we're on 3 cubic and uniform. Close that down. And we want to start our curve inside the hat area. So that's my first point. And you can see the curve starting right there. And just drop in kind of the minimum amount you need to make the curves. And my last one's going inside there, and enter on the keyboard to complete it. If you want to modify those, you can grab the components. It's right mouse clicking. There's the vertices. You can drag those around, position them how you like. All right, so I've got those positioned. Right mouse click, come back to Object, and coming back out here to my perspective view, you can see it's in the center right there. Okay, so to turn that into a tube, we're going to use a NURBS primitive circle. It's asking me to drag it on the grid, so I'm just dragging a circle down here, and I'm going to drag it up along here, moving it up kind of near the curve. With that selected, I'm going to shift select the curve, and switching over to the surfaces menu set, I'm going to come under surfaces, and I'm going to select the option box for extrude and make sure that that's all reset. And in here we're going to use a tube setting, at path and component, and we'll hit extrude there. So you can see it's extruded along that curve, and this is defining the radius of it. So we can scale that down just by grabbing the center one and making it to whatever thickness we like. I'm going to leave mine kind of thick. All right. And you can see this is pink. That means it's got some history associated with that. So I'm just going to shift select and grab everything, including the curve inside there, delete the history on it. Then I can come back to my outliner and select the curve and the circle and get rid of those. Double click on the hat. Let's rename these. So there's the hat and our extruded surface. Double click on that. It's our handle, and we can group those together. Call that hat group. And move that up and actually drop it inside the head group. All right, so if you want to modify any of that, you can. If you want to tip it, you might need to recenter the pivot. The pivot is down here, so just center the pivot on the hat. So if you do anything like tipping it and shifting it over like that, you're going to have to compensate on the head by grabbing the top row of vertices and kind of applying a similar type of curve. Make sure it's going up inside to the hat area. So you can do something like that if you want. Okay. And we can close that down now. And we're going to move on to the chest piece, recessing that area for the heart. Okay, we're going to move on to modeling the heart and creating the recessed area here on the chest. So let's zoom in here on the chest plate. We're going to drop in an edge loop. So right about there. Let's go back to 1 on our keyboard. We're going to need another one right here, as well as this area here and here. We'll need one right across the center here. So I've kind of divided this area up. And we're going to move the vertices around, kind of just shift selecting these vertices right here on the corner, scaling them in. So this is kind of similar to how we shaped our eye socket. So I just pulled those in, push these out a little bit more, trying to create a circular area that we're going to push back. So I'm going to grab these faces here and extrude them. Make sure we're in world space when we push them back. I'm going to grab the vertice in the middle and push that back a little bit more, just so it kind of makes a little cave like that. Then let's insert some edge loops. Place one here and one out here. And we're going to need to draw around the outside. I'll show you what happens if we try to just place an edge loop around here. It's going to wrap up and over the top, which we don't want. We want it to continue all the way around this opening. Let me just back out of that. Hit Q on the keyboard. So again, we're going to use our Split Polygon Tool. I'm going to start up here on the top and just start drawing around here. And enter. And let's make that last little connection right there. Okay. So again, with the triangles that we made here, we're going to just merge the vertices on the outside. So I'm selecting these two here and merging those. Grabbing these as well. This is under the polygon menu set, edit mesh. It's just merge. Okay. Grabbing these here. I've got a shortcut out on my shelf. All right. So let's hit 3 on the keyboard, see how that's holding up. So there's a little bit of pulling right here. That's because we need another edge loop across the belly area. So I'm just going to drop one in right here. You can see how it corrected that. We can even actually add another one right here. One right there. Kind of divides it up a little bit more evenly. Okay, so we're going to come in here now and create the glass piece that goes in the front. We're going to come under Create, NURBS Primitives, and we're going to use a sphere for that. Asking us to draw it on the grid. Just go ahead and do that. And take this up kind of in front here. We'll have to line it up. And let's go ahead and shape it a little bit. So I'm going to scale it down in Y first, kind of creating a disc like that. And we can come over here and rotate it. So 90 degrees in X rotation, has it facing towards us. We can come to our front view, line it up a little bit better and scale it. So let's just drag it here and kind of scale it down and position it on the center there. And now we need to just push it back in. Okay, so I'm going to recess mine a little bit like that. You can always dress this little area up a little bit. You can even select faces around here and extrude those out if you want to make it look like a little port. Look something like this. And you would need to drag in a few edge loops to hold those edges together. Here and here, as well as one in the front. And you can always round that one out a little bit by moving it forward. got a couple that are crossed right here. We'll have to adjust for that. And then I would just drop another one here on the inside to hold that edge together out there. So if you have an area right here where they're kind of crisscrossing, you want to correct that just by moving it back. Okay, probably have one here on the top as well. Let's check and make sure. Move that back. Okay. And go back to object mode, 3 on the keyboard. So if you want to do something like that, you can. And I'm going to bring this out a little bit further now that we have that. Okay, and just make sure that it's scaled. Scale mine a little bit in Y just because this is a little bit more elongated. So I have it fitting in there now. I'm just going to leave this as a NURBS. It's fine that it has triangles on there. It'll handle materials fine. We're just going to put a class shader on here anyway. Okay, and we can go ahead and do that right now. Just assign a new material so we can see through that. So I'm going to just put a temporary one in using a Fong. We'll come back and use mental ray shaders when we do all the materials for it. So just under that Fong, I'm going to take the transparency almost up to the very top. And we can see through that now. Okay. So I'm going to save it. Come back out here and actually go to the top view. We're going to draw out the shape at the heart using the Create Polygon Tool. And I'm going to start with the center. It's going to be the center of the heart. And I'm just sort of using the grid to kind of help me place my points. And one down here. And I'm going to match that up on the other side. And enter to finish it. And you can always reshape that, just grabbing the vertices and moving them around if you want to kind of shape it up a little bit differently. It doesn't have to be perfectly even. You can make one side a little bit larger. Okay, but we want to make sure that we have the same number of vertices on either side because we're going to actually draw across here with our split polygon tool and connect those now. So dragging one down the center here first. Connect it this way. Using Y on the keyboard, I'm going to keep drawing across here. Enter, Y on the keyboard. Enter, Y on the keyboard again. If we check our vertices, we don't have any vertices that are not connected with the other one that was already there. We don't want any edges that are just kind of dangling out there. Alright, so we need to quad this, so I'm going to come actually right across the center here, hit enter. So we've got 4-sided ones in these corners here, 4-sided here as well, and we should be able to hit 3 on the keyboard, kind of take a look at that initial shape. So let's go ahead and highlight the 2 vertices that we just created, and we're going to scale those out to around the corners. If you want to pull these points around, you can do that as well. Just kind of rounding it out. Okay, so we need to, I think, drop another one down the center here on either side. Enter. I'm going to put another one here. And enter. And we can draw another one across here. It's going to create some triangles if we do that. That's not necessarily a bad thing. We can just go ahead and do that and then draw one from here over to here. And here to here. So everything's quadded off. And I'm going to right mouse click and select all the faces across the top. Let's come back out here. You can kind of see what you've done. It's just a flat surface right now. Those are just polygon faces. And I'm going to extrude all of those faces and push them straight down. object mode, hit Q on the keyboard, and if you select 3, it should start to look a little bit like a heart now. And if you want to kind of round it out a little bit more, you can always come back here and grab the edges, shift select, and you may have to kind of click all the way around here. Our edges are a little bit broken up because we inserted some edge loops and we've got some vertices that are just not connected to other ones, so that's why it's not going all the way around when you double click it. So I'm just grabbing these, holding down the shift key, and just working my way around. Got our last 2 right here. Okay. So I can hit R on the keyboard now and kind of scale those in. You can see it's rounding out the area. If you hit 3 on the keyboard, it'll be a little bit more noticeable. Okay. Go back to object mode. Let's go ahead, and our pivot is over here in the center. Let's center our pivot point over that and kind of expand it like that. All right. And we need to place it now as well as kind of scale it down uniformly. And I'm going to move it up and bring it across here. It's still going to have to get scaled down a little bit. Let's rotate it forward. Let's scale it down so we can see it inside there. There it is. And I'm going to move it over a little bit like this, and I'm actually going to rotate a little bit so it's kind of off at an angle, kind of tilting to the left. All right, and I'm going to place a temporary shader on there. We're going to actually put a material on it later on, but let's go ahead and just assign a new material. I'm just going to give it a blend and come over to the color and select red so we can see that now. All right, so we've got our modeling complete now, and from here we're going to be adding materials and light and posing the character.